What's up, everyone, and welcome into a special edition of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with commentator for the Vancouver Warriors and host of the Coach's Calls podcast, Brad Challoner. Brad, thanks for jumping on with us. How's it going?
It's going great, man. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the invite. Always happy to talk lacrosse, especially after a Warriors win on a Monday morning.
They've been killing it since they got Del Bianco. 2 straight wins and in a playoff spot now, too. So it's a good transition. First question, I ask everybody the same question that's come on so far in this interview series we started out. What is one word to kind of describe the Warrior season with 4 games left to go?
Possibilities, I think, is the word I'm going to go with. Possibilities. Anything is possible down this stretch. I think what's favorable for the Vancouver Warriors' sake is that they've got 2 home games left, and they've been absolutely dominant at Rogers Arena. And a funny stat that I threw out on the broadcast a couple nights ago was Warriors are now 8-0, perfect against former East Division teams. And the 2 teams they have coming into Vancouver over the next month are Albany and Philly. So that home floor dominance and that dominance against former East Division teams, I think, can bode well. And possibilities, anything is possible. They go into Buffalo on the road. They've got a little bit of a tough schedule with that on the horizon, but anything is possible for this Warriors team right now, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect word to describe it. And we can kind of start with the offense here. And I know Kurt Malowski's kind of mentioned multiple times that this offseason is kind of where they're going to be targeting the forward area. But we're going to talk the here and now. And this team has struggled to put the ball on the back of the net, at least through the first 12 games. They're averaging, they got an 11th. They're 11th in the league in scoring right now with the season high of 15 that just happened this last weekend. But what do you think has kind of been the bigger reason why this offense has not really been able to put it all together just yet? Or do you think the 2 most recent games, do you believe they have finally figured it out, scoring 28 in the last 2 games?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think there were some growing pains for this offense to start the season, to be honest. I think, they had 2 rookies in the lineup in Peshko and Cormier to start the season. They wanted to get those guys their touches, but I don't think they were quite there yet. They weren't quite there to grasp the intricacies of a Kurt Malowski offense, and Cormier's still got a long ways to go kind of fitness-wise to figure out where he's going to fit into this lineup in the NHL, or sorry, in the National Lacrosse League going forward. So I do think there were some chemistries, guys coming in and out. I think Martel and Charlotte Beatty is both coming off of 30-goal seasons last year. Maybe thought it was going to come a little bit easier for them this year, and it certainly wasn't. Like, it's an extra step to try to be consistent is the hardest thing to do in the National Lacrosse League. So it took a while for those guys to find their footing. Claridge was breaking in and out of the lineup. Riley Lowen, they didn't know what they were going to do with Brad McCauley, trying different guys out on the right side as well after this Peshko trade. Ryan Sheridan waiting in the wings. Dylan McIntosh playing good. So, there's been a lot of different pieces of the puzzle coming in and out. So I do think kind of chemistry and figuring out the intricacies was kind of the issue in the first half of the season. But I do think they're kind of getting the message over this last stretch of games of getting inside, getting on the crease, playing physical, playing dirty Vancouver Warriors lacrosse. And that's why you're seeing Ryan Martel come off of his best game of the season. Marcus Claridge coming off of another fantastic game because those guys were hungry. They got inside. They know the price that it takes, the punishment they need to take to be successful. So, yeah, I think their offense is getting better at the right time. I do think it struggled to start the season. Still, they were the worst team 5-on-5, I think, outside of Toronto all season long. But to put up 15 against a very good Georgia Swarm team last weekend, I think is going to bode well for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think they're definitely on the right steps. And I kind of joked, and we'll joke a little later. Who would have thought adding a goaltender would have fixed the offense, right? But the offense is led with a righty-lefty duo in Keegan Ball and Adam Charlambides, like you already mentioned. But Ball is in the top 10 in the league in scoring, and Charlambides is at 26 right now. And I know Ball is 33. He's going to be 34 when next season starts. But do you think that these are 2 players that you can kind of build your offense around come the offseason when they're looking to add more forwards to this team?
Yeah, no question. I think Keegan Ball is one of the best offensive weapons in the league. But I think what also you have to think about with the Kurt Malowski offense is he's not going to build around anybody. Like, he wants to have 6 men deep, similar to a Colorado or an Albany or a Buffalo, some of the best offenses in the league. You have to have 6 pieces that are all going to be 20, 30 goal guys. And I don't think he likes to have a 1A quarterback or a 1B quarterback. He wants everybody contributing. So I do think Keegan Ball will be a big part of this offense for the future, but I don't think you're going to say like he is the offense, because I think Kurt wants to target, you mentioned it in recent interviews in the last couple of weeks, he wants to go out and add offensive righties. So that's Keegan Ball's position. That's his bread and butter. And he's going to have to learn to play with new guys that are going to come into this club into the future as Kurt kind of brings more and more UFAs home to Vancouver as a destination. So elite athlete, yes, you want him part of your team, 100%, but he's not going to be the guy, because he's going to want 5 or 6 guys going with Keegan Ball to get this team to the promised land.
Yeah, a good building block to build off of. I guess that's the best way to put it. But the team has some nice young pieces, even trading out Peshko. But I think playing out the front door, you see Marcus Clarich getting some opportunities. Peyton Cormier, you already mentioned him. But I've kind of liked their games in the limited amount of action, especially with Cormier coming in. But what growth have you seen from at least these guys, even from the start of this season?
Yeah, and that's another Kurt Malowski tradition too. Something that he does really well is he coaches guys up. And so, though Cormier hasn't got into the lineup over the last handful of games, you see him at shoot around, you see him at practice. Like, just his body shape is completely different, I think, than what we saw at the start of the season. Like, Kurt compares him a lot to Chris Cloutier, who was just a dynamo scorer in the NCAA, but then came to play against men in the National Lacrosse League and took a minute to kind of get that athleticism back and get that physicality and realize that's what it's going to take to be successful. So I think we've seen it from Cormier more off the floor because he hasn't been getting in to the lineup, how much he's changed, but that's going to bode well for the future. And then Clarich, he's a special case. He's the exact opposite of Cormier, because Cormier came in after 5 years of NCAA and setting the record for goals scored there, and comes into as a rookie at like 24 or 25 years old, has to adjust his body a little bit to adapt to men. Clarich was the exact opposite. He was drafted out of the BC Junior League, never played college lacrosse, got to the NLL at 20, just a string bean that got pushed around and beat up a little bit, went back to junior, won a scoring title with the BC Junior A Burnaby Lakers, comes back to the National Lacrosse League now. He's bulked up. He's working with Keegan Ball. He's worked on his athleticism. He's a lot stronger, a lot more physical, a lot more confident taking the ball to the rack. So we've seen kind of 2 different development cases happen with those 2 players, which is kind of unique in itself. To have 2 guys just shows the uniqueness of the National Lacrosse League, I think, that you could have 2 different guys that are completely different physical specimens that went through 2 different career paths to get to where they are. And Cormier is going to find success down the road, and Clarich is finding it right now.
So the team moved Jonathan Peshko at the deadline, and it was part of the massive 4-team deal, which is still mind-blowing to me that GMs can work that fine-tune in that limited amount of time. But they got plenty of picks back to kind of restock the cabinets from Christian Del Bianco deal. And I think another bigger reason for that deal is with Ryan Sheridan, one of the players that got picked up in the dispersal draft to Panther City. So he's on his way back. But how big is it for this type of offense that up until recently has not really performed the way they had hoped to, getting a young addition back for the stretch run?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like getting a draft pick 3 months into the season, deep into the season. And they haven't even needed him the last couple of games. Like he's been able to take his time. He's like 9 months post-op now. They've been working really closely with the Vancouver Warriors training staff to get to where he needs to be. Again, I've seen him at practice. Like, the guy can shoot the lights out of the ball. He's going to be being able to bang bodies around, such a weapon when he comes in. But Dylan McIntosh has kind of been waiting in the practice roster, waiting for his shot. He got 2 goals in his debut 2 weeks ago. And the Warriors were kind of traditional about they don't like to change their lineup after a win. So 2 wins in a row, and Sheridan hasn't been able to get in because Dylan McIntosh has been so good and so responsible and hasn't been a reliability on the floor. So again, I don't know if we're going to see Sheridan this week in Buffalo just because they're coming off that consistency and that win. But when he does get in, that's like picking a guy up off the street after the trade deadline and a former first-round draft pick. Another guy who's just going to be mean and set picks and has a nose for the net, plays a little bit nasty game, which is what you're going to need against a Buffalo or against any team you're going to see in the playoffs. You need that edge and that nastiness, and that's what Sheridan's going to bring. As long as he doesn't come in with any rust or any chemistry issues, that's the guy you're going to be able to plug into that lineup and make an immediate impact.
So last one in terms of the offense, you got a guy like Brian Martell. He was on pace for 24 goals in the 2022-23 season last year. pop with 34 and 79 points last year. But this year, he's kind of taken a step back. I know last game he popped out for 4, but he's on pace for 16.5 goals and around 48 points. And last year, he was shooting at a 29% clip. This year, it's down a bit. It jumped in the last game, but it's about 17.5 at this point. Do you think it's a little bit of shooting luck, maybe goaltenders making the adjustments on him that he just hasn't yet, maybe a combo? Or do you even think that the last game where he put in 4, he might have gotten it figured out this season now?
Yeah, I think that definitely could have been like one of those patented monkey off the back games that might open the floodgates a little bit. But I think I kind of mentioned it off the top, or is that I think he maybe thought at the start of the season that it was going to come a little bit easier, like it did last year when balls were dropping. And it's just not how the National Lacrosse League operates. You just alluded to, like, goaltenders are doing their homework, so they know what to expect from Ryan Martel. And I just don't think he was getting as dirty and as nasty inside as he was last year at the start of this season, which held him back a little bit. So it's a little bit of everything. I think he was gripping a stick a little bit too tight, maybe thinking, hey, Cormier's here, and McCauley was there at the start of the season, and there's guys coming for my job, and that might have threw him off his game a little bit, especially with Marcus Claridge emerging. But if he's got the confidence to know that he's going to be the water bug, he's going to be a spark plug, he's going to be a guy who gets inside, and he's still going to get his touches and be part of this offense, that's going to help his confidence. And then busting out for 4 last week, like you mentioned, is going to help too. So I think it's time now for Ryan Martel to find that consistency for the rest of the season.
Yeah, because I loved his game last year. But the Coach's Calls podcast, I love the show. I love the concept of it. But for those that might not have gotten the chance to check it out yet, what was the idea behind it, getting it off the ground, and then the success that it is now?
Kind of just like this, man. Like just love talking lacrosse. And one of the cool things we get to do when we prep for our TSN games of the week or our NLL Plus games of the week is we, as broadcasters, we always check in with the coaches. So we have great, Teddy and I and Jake Elliott and I, we have great kind of off the record conversations with coaches every game week. And there's been times where I'm like, man, I wish there was fans could hear what these coaches are giving us during the week. Like, they need a platform where they could just spit for 60 minutes and share all their wisdom and let people kind of soak up that knowledge and learn what they're all about. And I'm also a junkie for reading like coaches' books and coaches' novels and things like that. And I've always read them going, you know what? I talked to a lot of National Lacrosse League coaches that have similar stories or just as much knowledge as some of these NHL or NBA guys do. I want to provide a platform for them to share their stories, let other people hear what they're about. So it's been a blast getting to talk to every head coach of the National Lacrosse League and a lot of the assistants, and even the guys in the junior leagues are a lot of fun to talk to, like the next generation of coaches like John Lynch and Riley O'Connor and Dan McRae. Like, they're just fun chats of guys who know so much about lacrosse and want to provide the platform for them to share their stories. So hopefully people listen can take a little bit of what they're spitting every week and take a little bit of that knowledge back to their teams. And it's been a lot of fun. And it's tough to do every week, as you know. Like, it's tough to commit to sit down and bang out a podcast week in and week out. So, you know, my consistency has been a little bit off this season, but hope to get back in the groove heading into the summer here and share some more of those conversations.
So let's flip to the defensive side of the ball. I mean, no question, they're either the best or one of the best defensive groups in the league. And the numbers are backing it up, having tied for the lowest goals against average in the entire league. Obviously, it helps having Kurt to draw players in, but what other reasons are there that kind of draws some of these bigger name veteran pieces back there, like the Ryan Dilks, the Jeff Cornwall comes over, the Matt Beers that comes over as well? Like, what makes Vancouver the destination for some of these veteran pieces besides the Kurt Malowskis?
Have you been to Vancouver?
I haven't, and I talked to Jake Elliott about it last time. Me and my wife are going out there for a visit, so I was trying to get the lay of the land a bit.
Yeah, I heard him giving you the disc golf course recommendations, but
I said the wrong word.
All joking aside, though, like, seriously, that's people want to come play in Vancouver, especially guys who grew up here. Like, Toronto kind of has that advantage. Buffalo has that advantage a little bit, being so close to southwestern Ontario. You know, there's a lot of guys who want to come play close to home as they become free agents and call their own shots at the end of their career. And that always hasn't been easy because there hasn't been a lot of success here in Vancouver. So they haven't been able to attract those BC free agents, those born and bred guys like they have in years past. But when Kurt came in, he kind of set the stage of the track record, championship pedigree coach. Guys want to play for him. He had a blueprint. He knew the kind of guys he wanted to target and kind of give that sales pitch to, and they chose to come home. And it's not just the coaching staff or the location. Like Canuck Sports Entertainment treats these guys really well too. So when you get CSE involved and just show like how they treat these guys like pros, and how they treat their families well, and how it is a big extended family, I think that helps. You got a championship vision. You've got a mastermind of a coach. You got a beautiful city. It kind of like, I'm just selling myself, if I was a player in this league, I'd be wanting to do all those things too, and check off all those boxes late stages in your career, right? So I do think they've got a homegrown advantage now, and guys see wins happening on the floor and they want to be a part of it even more.
Yeah, all the pieces are kind of finally coming together. But Braden Leedy goes out the door to Calgary in the Christian Del Bianco deal. I think it's a big loss, but to acquire an all-time talent like that, you got to move talent. And to me, the whole offseason, it was probably Reed Bowering, it was Owen Grant, or it was Braden Leedy that were the top targets for Calgary. I think everybody thought the same three names. And if you want to make a type of deal like that, that's the type of pieces that you're going to have to ship out. But that means Grant and Bowering remain. And I know some might have kind of switched off of them with Ryan Terefenko going absolutely bananas recently, but am I still crazy to have Owen Grant as my favorite to win the Transition Player of the Year right now?
Absolutely not. Because if you're crazy, then half the voters, I think, around the league are probably feeling the same way. Like, OG's got my vote, not only because chipping in transition and being one of the top scoring defenders, but like, he doesn't just do that. He's not a guy who's going to leak and catch a bunch of breakaway passes and dump 20. He's going to play solid defense first. He's going to soak shots. He's going to cause turnovers with his hands, pick up loose balls off the ground, run them up, and turn those into transition scenarios. Like, he's got the smarts. He's got the IQ. He's got that anticipation. We haven't even seen him yet really get like a Christian Del Bianco breakaway pass. Like, that's still coming, but he's not going to leak and cheat to get that opportunity, like I just said. So the way that he plays physical, responsible D, and then turns that into transition makes him such a unique force and a unique weapon in this league that we haven't seen really, I think, since Brody Merrill, the guy that's like that big, that physical, and that skilled to put it all together like that. I think it's a pretty special body work that he's putting together this season with his numbers.
And it's even more terrifying. It's only year 2. He's just going to keep getting better.
Yeah. What's he going to look like? What's he going to look like in 5 or 10 years? Like, he can rewrite some of the record books with caused turnovers and transition goals from a breakaway from a defensive player. It's going to be fun to watch,
especially with the defense around him and Kurt coaching him. But the team also has some other elite guys back there. They got 4 guys in the top 35 in caused turnovers. They got 5 guys in the top 40 in block shots, and 4 guys in the top 30 in loose balls. What have you seen from this defense that just makes it so lethal and them work together so well?
Yeah, personnel is a big part of that, I think. Like, you mentioned Ryan Dilks in there, Jeff Cornwall, Matt Beers, Brett Midsky. Like, these are all National Lacrosse League champion players that have kind of provided the base and the foundation for this D. And then you add in guys like Subak and Remo Shinato and the young players that have surrounded themselves with. So it's a nice mix. They play a fun brand of lacrosse. I think they enjoy the system, that it's a responsible system. They could pack it in at times, but they could also get out on hands and take a couple risks and get physical and turn defense into offense. So I think guys enjoy playing in a Rob Williams defensive system too. And you can kind of see how much energy and kind of how engaged this back end is. So I think that's part of the recipe too, is like, they love the system. They love the teammates around them. There's not a selfish player amongst them. And it's turned into a well-oiled machine this season.
So I guess on the flip side of it, all the praise that I'm giving and laying on them, their penalty kill unit has not been as successful. 13th in the league right now, 47%. What do you think hasn't gone right for them right now with the man down?
Yeah, that's a weird one. Like, you look at their penalty kill, and it's 4 of those guys that I just mentioned: Cornwall, Beers, Dilks, and Midsky, all championship veterans. Owen Grant will play some minutes out there. Braden Leedy played a lot of penalty kill too before he got traded. So it's not a personnel thing. I think it's just one of those numbers that becomes a little bit of an anomaly over time. They also say your goaltender has to be your best penalty killer, and not to take anything away from Aiden Walsh in the season that he was putting together, but Christian Delbianco is going to be a little bit more solid down the stretch for them, right? So I don't know. I don't think you can look at holes and go, hey, they've got a weak penalty kill. Let's make sure we capitalize. Power plays are always going to be big for every team, but I don't think it's something that the teams can circle and go, you know what? If we get them in the penalty box tonight, they've got a really weak penalty kill. We're gonna do really well. I just think it's one of those weird anomalies. I think they've tried some different things. We've seen them kind of run a diamond at some point, and it's something that's been a little bit more challenging for them to wrap their heads around at times, especially when the ball goes behind the net. Sometimes you can get a couple miscues here and there, and they'll lose positioning. But you know, if those 4 veterans like that can just stay at home and don't break their box and stay in their positions, I think they'll be just fine the rest of the way.
Yeah, you can kind of relate it to like the power play across the NLL right now. Some of the top teams have some of the lowest power play numbers. It's just one of those years that the numbers aren't backing up the records. But
yeah,
you kind of transition me into this next one here. Aiden Walsh, he played absolutely electric this season. I actually had him in my top 3 for goaltender of the year midway through the season, but the team made a move and go out and bring in all-star and former MVP and former goaltender and all the accolades he's got, Christian Delbianco. And I do not blame them whatsoever. I understand the reasoning behind it. But for those of us on the East Coast that might not follow the Western teams as much, and for those that kind of look at it and go, hey, the goaltender position wasn't the issue, why make this move? And we've said it on our podcast. Maybe someone like you who's in the building, who sees them firsthand, maybe if it comes from you, it'll make more sense and it'll kind of make those people grasp it. But why add a Christian Delbianco when you already have an Aiden Walsh playing as good as he was?
Well, this is the Buffalo Sports Collective. So yeah, I just have to say, like, Matt Vince, Christian Delbianco and Matt Vince. He's that difference. He's that big of a difference maker. Like, Buffalo was there, but Buffalo didn't become the Buffalo that they are today without Matt Vince joining that team. You need a franchise shifting goaltender. I say it a lot. It's like the NFL. Again, Buffalo, we're going to talk about, you know, franchise quarterbacks. You can't win in the National Lacrosse League with an average goaltender or a good goaltender. You have to win with an absolute MVP caliber goaltender. That's what Buffalo's done. That's what Colorado did with Dylan Ward before that. That's what Calgary did with Christian Delbianco before that. Like, literally, your last 3 championship goaltenders are 3 of the best in the sport, 3 of the best the sport has ever seen. So you need a number one. Yes, Walsh was fantastic this season. The defense was great, but you don't get over the hump without a guy that's on a complete other level. And I think the other part of that, for people that might look at that trade and go, hey, they already had the second best goals against average all season long, and Walsh is playing great. Why go out and make this trade now? Well, I don't think, because it happened at the deadline, but it wasn't a deadline deal to all of a sudden go on a championship run this season. Yes, they've looked good the last couple of weeks, but that trade was for the next 5 or 10 years and help the Vancouver Warriors build something special and build a dynasty down the road. And you can't do that without one of the world's best goaltenders, and that's what Christian Delbianco is. It's the biggest trade since Matt Vince went from Colorado to Rochester to set up that first three-peat that he went on, and now here he is chasing his second one. So Delbianco is to the Warriors what Matt Vince is and has been to the Buffalo Bandits.
Yeah, I think you put it perfectly, and we said it on the show after that happened. It's, okay, you can look at this. It's not for the next 6 games. It's for the next 6 years. And
100%.
Now that you have that franchise-changing player between the pipes for the next 10, maybe 15 years if he plays like Matt Vince does, and I think he has the ability to do it, what is one element of his game besides those big-time saves that he's going to bring to this team to take it to the next level, whether it be the rest of the season and trying to get into the playoffs or for future years?
Yeah, the obvious one right now, and what he's been known for besides making key timely saves, is what good of a passer he is and getting in and sparking the offense. Like, he's an assist per game goaltender. No one even else comes close as far as goaltenders go in the National Lacrosse League, the way that he gets the ball in and out of his stick. And we didn't see it a ton against Georgia because I think they game planned really well to combat it, having Lyle Thompson hustling back all the time and taking transition away. But like, they ate up Toronto in the first half of that first game with Delbianco's passing. So I think that's one thing that he brings. We saw it in Calgary with Shane Simpson and Zach Curry, or Vancouver will He's going to build that with Owen Grant and Jeff Cornwall and other players. So that's the obvious thing that jumps out, is just like he makes the saves, but he also sparks the offense as a quarterback. The other thing that Kurt Malowski always says about Christian Delbianco is like, he's got this goaltender's mentality of wanting to single-handedly steal games. Something that we really haven't seen since like Dallas Eliuk was in the league. A guy who's like, you know what, my time now, I can single-handedly shut the door in the second half and go get this win for us. That's the Delbianco mindset. Like, he's that headstrong that he can block out everything else that happened in that first half and go absolutely close the door and just take a game over, and wants to take a game over. Some goalies don't want to be that guy or have that responsibility, but like, he wants it. He likes that pressure and he wants to be the guy. So those are a couple of things that I think set Delbs apart from the rest of the pack.
So what is your favorite part of getting to call NLL games and having that vantage point of the floor that not many other people get to witness firsthand?
Free food.
That's fair.
From Buffalo, seriously, free food. No. It's like, I grew up playing, and anybody who's ever touched a stick knows how sacred this game is. And coaches say sometimes, like, people coach and be involved with the game so they can still stay close to it. And that's kind of when I started broadcasting lacrosse, was my way to stay connected to the game. And if I'm not on the floor playing, being in the broadcast booth is the closest thing. Like, just the world shutting off for those 60 minutes of lacrosse time, 2 hours of game time. You're just absolutely locked in, and the game takes over. And to me, there's no better feeling. I've never found anything in my life that's replicated being so close to the game, playing the game as broadcasting it. So that's why I continue to do it. That's what I love to do it. Yes, we get spoiled with with the great facilities that we get to call games in and travel around, the production crews that we get to work with. But at the end of the day, you're still calling a lacrosse game and being connected to the game, and that's what keeps me staying around as long as I have.
Yeah, big shout out to Scott Loeffler, who got that the food up in the press box. Now
I was there. I was there for the home opener this season, and that was the first game apparently that they had pizza and wings up there in a long time. So I was glad I got to be a part of that. Loeffler treats everyone really well, so I appreciate Buffalo.
Oh yeah, he's first class. But we'll look forward to this coming Saturday, Bandits versus Warriors. Last year, Vancouver got the best of them, 13-12 in Vancouver. So how much extra juice can there be pulled from that game last year, with the extra motivation that, hey, we can travel to Banditland, we can hang with these guys. We just did it last year, and we still need those wins to lock down a playoff spot. How much extra juice can they pull from a victory last year?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, can I say none? Can I say that happened so long ago that and it happened in Vancouver, right? Like, going into Banditland is, as you know, such a different experience for teams to go through. Like, I think they're looking at this game going, shit, we have to go into Buffalo. Like, that, it's not an easy place to play lacrosse. So yeah, maybe they beat them last year at home in Vancouver, which is a different story. But I think that was so long ago. And now with this whole new Delbianco era, I think they're starting from scratch. I think if anything, they're looking at this game like, hey, we've beat Calgary beat them. We've seen Buffalo kind of not take a step back, but just haven't been as dominant in the last few weeks. And we know Kurt does his homework, and the whole Warriors team will do their homework. But that's probably the toughest place to go into in the entire National Lacrosse League, and they're probably looking at this game with a complete new scope, new lens, new set of eyes than they were from that game that they beat Buffalo a year ago.
Yeah, I think a lot of the teams are looking different, and I don't even believe I was doing the prep work for our Friday show. Matt Vince didn't even play in that game.
No, that's right. It was Devlin Shanahan was in that game, and
I think Orlman came in relief as well. But what area of Vancouver's game do you think they either have or can get an advantage over the Bandits to get that victory in Buffalo?
Yeah, I don't think Buffalo maybe seen a defense quite like Vancouver's yet this season. Like, they do have a top-notch D. I don't think guys like Dane and Josh are going to know what an Owen Grant cross-check really feels like in year two until they feel it for the first time. They kind of, and at times, can play a similar defense to Buffalo's in the way that they can just pack it in and take away the middle and get on guys. So think that'll be the best thing that Vancouver has going for them, is that they're an elite defense that Buffalo probably hasn't felt a ton of yet this season, and how dominant they've been. They've played some good teams, obviously, yes, and have lost a couple games, but I think Vancouver's D is just kind of on a little bit of a different level across the league, and now having Delbianco there. So even if you break down the D and get in alone on the crease, you're staring down one of the best goaltenders in the world. So this game just got a lot tougher for Buffalo. Dougie had a fantastic game last week, and their shooters got robbed there in the fourth quarter and in overtime against a world-class goaltender. So Vancouver's going to have that going for them, and they're going to have a physical, punishing D. I think that'll give the Buffalo Bandits some challenges next week.
So just two more for you here. I try not to ask, and I don't think I've ever asked a guest this, but I try not to ask them an exact score prediction because it's near impossible. But what kind of game do you think we're expecting to see on Saturday night when these two teams face off?
You know what? I think so. Delbianco allows 8 in the first game, allows 13 last week to Georgia. I think we're in for another low scoring one. Like you've got a hungry Delbianco just in his third game. Like this kid, you got to think about being in mid-season form now. Yes, he's been playing in the ALL, but this is only his third game in the National Lacrosse League. Matt Vince just played 2 in one weekend at 42 years old. And now Delbianco gets to come across the country and play a game in Buffalo. But I think you're talking about two of the best goaltenders the game has ever seen. I think we're in for a low scoring one. Like give me like a 9-8 game, I think, this weekend.
Yeah, kind of what we saw when Buffalo faced Saskatchewan, when they had to go out there and it was the Frankie and Matt Vince show. It was locking it down both sides. But last one for you, and I try to ask one that comes out of left field for this last one to kind of wrap it up. And lacrosse is back in the Olympics in 2028. Absolutely love it. But my question is, what sport or what one sport isn't in the Olympics that should be? And it could be a real sport or one that maybe you played as a childhood growing up. I kind of thought of an idea of, okay, we'll time trainers to get out onto the ice on their regular shoes to see how fast they can get to a player that's down on the ice.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. There's two that come to mind for me. Like I'm a big music guy. I know there's been hip hop Olympics and like freestyle competitions and stuff like that. What about like a musical Olympics with like musical guitar playing or something like that? Like how many notes in a solo can someone bang off? Or like even from an artistic score standpoint, like a gymnastics or figure skating or something, like have guys just shred and rate their guitar solos or rate their drum solos. Like there's nothing more athletic musically than a drum solo. So maybe music Olympics. Would you be down for that?
I like it. I mean, they had the breakdancing in the last Olympics as well.
I'll also throw out, this is actually, I think they've actually talked about this to be in the Olympics, but as a West Coast guy, we get to do a lot of supping, stand-up paddleboarding, and I think they are, it's not happening in LA, but like there has been a movement is equal to the lacrosse movement to get stand-up paddleboarding racing in the Olympics. And like I have fun doing that every summer out here in Victoria on the different lakes and stuff that we have. So some sup racing, I think, could be pretty sick too in the Olympics.
Yeah, we just got to find out who we got to write these letters to ship them in.
Right, and it has to be, that's a summer Olympic game, obviously, because frozen supping might not work as well.
But Brad, thank you for joining us on the Buffalo Sports Collective. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you, where they can find the show, and anything else you might want to plug?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. The Coaches Calls podcast drops every Monday wherever you get your podcasts, and the Lacrosse Culture Daily podcast network. I'm on Instagram at Brad Challoner and on X at Brad Chal. And enjoy the games this weekend. It's only getting tougher down the stretch here for every team. The March to May is real, and it is intense. So I appreciate everybody hanging out. Appreciate talking lacrosse with you, and let's do this again sometime.
Oh, yeah, perfect. So thanks again for joining us on the BSC. Hope to talk to you down the road and continued success with Coaches Calls and broadcasting. We'll be back Friday for a normal episode to preview Bandits versus Warriors, and we'll talk to you all then.